There was once a time in America when modesty was a foundation of societal values. From the way people dressed to the way they behaved in public, modesty was a sign of respect toward others, toward oneself, and toward society as a whole. But in recent decades, things have changed. Modesty, once considered a virtue, seems to be fading from our cultural landscape. So, how did we get here? To understand the decline of modesty, we must look back at when it was once embedded in American culture. Modesty was rooted in religious values, cultural expectations, and the idea of preserving dignity. Men and women adhered to specific norms, both in terms of dress and behavior. Women wore dresses that covered their bodies, and men were expected to dress conservatively. Public spaces were seen as places to uphold one's dignity, and immodesty was often associated with rebellion, scandal, or moral decay. This adherence to modesty was not just about clothing. It was extended to speech, social interaction, and behavior in general. Modesty was a social expectation that ensured a sense of order and respect in public life. In the early colonial period, modesty was strongly influenced by puritanical values emphasizing modest dress and behavior, particularly for women. This was in line with strict religious and social codes where modesty was seen as a virtue that upheld morality and family structure. During the 19th century, Victorian ideals of modesty flourished, promoting conservative clothing and restraint in public life. Dresses with high collars, long sleeves, and corsets were common, symbolizing social respectability and modesty. In the early 20th century, modesty began to shift with the advent of the flapper culture in the 1920s, which saw women adopting shorter skirts, bobbed hair, and more liberated attitudes. However, the pendulum swung back during the post-World War II era, with modesty again becoming associated with traditional family values and conservative gender roles. But the 1960s brought about further change. In the 1960s, the sexual revolution began to challenge the traditional notions of modesty. It was a time of experimentation and pushing back against the repressive norms of the past. Sexuality became less about private, intimate expression and more about public freedom. This era started the idea that modesty was an outdated, moralistic concept, something to be discarded in the name of personal autonomy and liberation. Modesty was viewed as something restrictive, a shackle that confined personal expression. It wasn't just about clothes anymore. It was about freedom of thought, freedom of expression, and breaking down the barriers of tradition.
Just a bit of advice. If you're dressing for Stephen, not that one. He doesn't like anything quite so obvious.
Thank you. But when Stephen doesn't like what I wear, I take it off.
As the decades went on, the idea that modesty was important began to erode, especially as culture became more permissive. Culture like celebrity culture. The sexual revolution wasn't the only thing that contributed to the decline of modesty. The rise of celebrity culture and mass media also played a significant role. Now that we have the internet, people's lives are more public than ever before. Celebrities, social media influencers, and reality TV stars began to dictate the cultural conversation, often without any regard for modesty. In this world, attention is the currency. Modesty doesn't sell. Sex sells. Drama sells. And that might be a greed problem, but that's another video. The more outrageous or revealing you are, the more visibility you get. The mainstreaming of this almost egotistical culture has gradually shifted the meaning of modesty, turning it from a sign of dignity into a relic of the past. Social media in particular has been a driving force behind the erosion of modesty. There is a constant pressure to present the best version of yourself all the time. What's going to get the most views, likes, follows, etc.? Modesty now feels at odds with the culture of likes, shares, and viral trends. The line between private and public life is blurred, and the need for validation from strangers on the internet has made it harder for people to retain their sense of self-respect and modesty. People are encouraged to present their lives in an exaggerated, often inauthentic way, prioritizing appearance over substance. Of course, the internet has its pros, but there's been some crazy trends out there and norms. I remember in high school, there was this trend called the silhouette trend, which was a trend where you basically took all your clothes off with the lights down and showed off your body. Also, more recently, the get ready with me's, when people are putting on their outfits, they start off in their underwear to put the outfit on. I don't know what happened to like grabbing your phone and, just showing the outfit on your bed. Also, more recently, I think it was the Grammy. No, not the Grammys. Yeah, one of the celebrity award shows. Kanye West's wife showed up basically nude. When we no longer value modesty, we risk losing our ability to connect with another on a deeper level. We become obsessed with outward appearances and superficial recognition at the expense of meaningful, respectful relationships. The rise of immodesty in public spaces, whether through clothing or speech, often leads to a lack of civility. Honestly, it's not just about modesty, it's about respect. When modesty fades, it can be hard to distinguish between personal freedom and a breakdown of social fabric. The overexposure of everything, whether it's our bodies or our thoughts, leaves little room for nuance or true human connection. And of course, opposing beliefs has something to do with the decline in modesty because religion played a significant role in promoting modesty. This video doesn't mean that we need to return to the restrictive values of the past, nor should we ignore the importance of individual expression. But perhaps we can find a balance, a middle ground where personal autonomy and self-expression can coexist with a sense of dignity and respect for others.
God does not judge us by our outward appearance. What I love about God is that God looks at your heart. He doesn't look at your outer appearance. When God chose David to be the next king, God didn't look at the things that man looked at. David looked like the least likely to be picked. Out of all of his brothers, he was the youngest. He was a shepherd. Most people would overlook David to be the next king. And that's exactly who God decided to use. I said that to say, do not put your worth and your validation in external things. Don't let your beauty come from the outward appearance, but instead let it come from within.
In the end, modesty is not just about covering up. It's about preserving a sense of integrity, dignity, and respect. It's about knowing when to speak and when to listen, when to stand out and when to step back. As we move forward, it's worth considering what kind of society we want to build and whether modesty still has a place in that vision. The choice is ours. And what choice do you think would be the best for American culture moving forward?